Hey, it's Will Friedle.
And Sabrina Bryan.
And we're the hosts of the new podcast, Magical Rewind.
You may know us from some of your favorite childhood TV movies like My Date with the President's Daughter.
And the Cheetah Girls movies.
Together, we're sitting down to watch all the movies you grew up with and chat with some of your favorite stars and crew that made these iconic movies happen.
So kick back, grab your popcorn, and join us. Listen to Magical Rewind on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Brought to you by State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Odoo is business management made so simple, a kid could explain it.
Sometimes business software can't talk to other programs. But Odoo, funny word, has every program from CRM to HR to accounting in one platform. It should cost a lot, but it doesn't. So you should use Odoo because they save you money.
Odoo makes a lot of sense, but doesn't cost a lot of sense. Sign up now at odoo.com.
That's ODOO.com.
Good job.
Thanks.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So glad you could join us once again for another hour of Giants football. I'm Paul Dottino, he's Matt Citak. And today, the players are off. Yes, indeed, they get a moment to rest. The last 2 days, they had fully padded practices, full gear, kind of got into each other a little bit, and so now they get today off. But that means we can talk to you about the first week of training camp, since it actually technically opened with the first practice a week from today. So we'll talk about some of the things we've seen, some of the stars so far, some of the guys who still need to pick it up. And, of course, we will also talk to you at 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513, hashtag Giants Chat on Twitter. And as a reminder, if you're not watching the show live, you can get the archive and our entire podcast network on the Giants mobile app, podcast platforms everywhere, and at giants.com/podcasts. Matt, it's so strange when the guys have off during camp, because it's like we just don't have the flow or the energy that we're usually getting in the morning.
Strange, yes, but also a little bit nice, because it's nice to just have one day where we're not standing out in the heat for 2 hours. I do enjoy practice. It's, once the season starts, we don't get to stand on the field and watch practice. So I do enjoy this time of year for that reason. But standing out in the hot New Jersey sun for 2 hours every day, it's a little draining.
Well, 2 weeks ago, the heat index was over 100.
That is true.
So
we've had some hot days in this first week.
Try to look at the glass half full. It's been a lot better than it was earlier in July.
That is for sure. We've had a couple of doozies, though. Yesterday was pretty hot and sticky. Yesterday wasn't the best temperature day.
Well, in any event, the players are off today, and they
Yes.
certainly do appreciate that. They'll be back at work again tomorrow. Those folks who have their tickets for the free attending of practices, make sure that you get here early. The alums start autographing, I believe it is at 8:30 in the morning, do they not? They autograph from 8:30 till 10. Practice usually starts at 10, and then you get to watch practice, which usually runs about an hour and 45 or so. And then you go on your merry way. But it's fun here. So kind of a bunch of activities, folks. I don't know if you haven't been out here and you've got some tickets, be aware the Giants do a few things for you. Not only do they have the alums out there signing autographs, they have some fun participation things you can do, football throw, and some and kinds of carnival games. But the other thing is they also are very, very careful about having big water stations out there. Because by all means, when Matt says it gets hot, and it can be a bit uncomfortable, well, it can be. So there are water stations out here, so you can always get yourself some water. Make sure you stay hydrated so that we don't have any issues. We don't want anybody coming here and winding up having some sickness or not feeling good or whatever. Make sure you stay hydrated. Even though there's a canopy on the bleachers, It can get warm.
Yeah, it definitely can. Has a few days in this first week of camp. And, as we get into August, I'm sure the heat index is going to jump back up.
Yeah, and of course, the first preseason game will be August 8th as the Giants host the Detroit Lions. The Lions who will be here for a dual practice session with the Giants on the 5th and the 6th. I got to tell you, Matt, I know we're only Wednesday, right? And it's the 30th.
31st.
Okay, 31st. That's correct. See, I'm already getting discombobulated by not having a practice today. Once I get the wheels turning, man, I get in rhythm.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I'm just go, 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 go. There's, you know, what do they say? No brakes?
Yeah,
you know,
all gas,
pedal,
no brakes.
all pedal, all gas, no brakes. That's me. You folks already knew that, though, didn't you? Anyway, I can't wait for the 5th and the 6th when the Lions get here. Already, it was great to have the first practice. Then it was great to have the first padded practice. Now the next litmus test, right? The next one is fully padded against an opponent. Can't wait for those two.
Yeah, those are going to be probably in my opinion, the best practices of all the training camp. I mean,
well, the big one with the Jets too, which could be a good one too.
That's true. That is definitely true. But I don't know. I see the Lions are this, young up and coming team with a lot of young, talented players. The Jets are obviously very talented as well. They steer a little bit more towards the veteran, older side, I would say, their roster. They have some good young players, but I'm just excited to see some of the Giants' good young players matched up against some of Detroit's good young players. I mean, we're going to get 2 days of training camp practices, which, as we've talked about before, you and I were both in Detroit last year for the joint practices. They were so awesome to watch.
Well, they're energetic and they're gritty because of their head coach, Dan Campbell. He demands that from them. I said to John the other day on this program, that's why I'm really pumped up about the Giants and Lions practicing together, because you know that the Lions should be bringing out the best in your guys. They're not going to let you slack off during these practices. Campbell won't let that team do that. Not that Dable would either, but I think it's going to be a real sandpaper, abrasive kind of let's go get it kind of practice.
Yeah, I mean, what we saw last year in Detroit, you're totally right. Dan Campbell has his team going 110% every single rep of practice.
Yeah.
And again, not saying that the Giants don't go full throttle during practices when it's, just Giants versus Giants, but just the energy at those practices last year in Detroit, it was just on another level from what we had seen, the first week or two of training camp prior to those joint practices. So it's the first time we're going to see our players go up against just a different team. It's great having reps against your teammates. Deonte Banks, Malik Neighbors, they're making each other better this summer. Andrew Thomas, Brian Burns, they're making each other better. But it's a totally different feeling when you're going up against players, the best players from another team. Brian Burns getting reps against Penei Sewell. That's going to be great
or Taylor Decker.
Or Taylor Decker.
Side.
That's going to be great for Brian Burns.
And Tibbs, too.
And Tibbs, yeah. Deonte Banks matching up at least sometimes with Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Right.
This is just great practice reps to get these guys ready for the start of the season, because the start of the season is going to be here before we know it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And we don't know, again, how many snaps the regulars are going to play during the preseason. So it's these dual practices where they're really going to get their work.
Yeah, definitely. I cannot wait for that.
And by the way, you and I had this conversation, and I've talked about it with John on the program. We're going to get to your calls in just a minute. Lines are open, 201-939-4513. We were talking about Daniel Jones. I'm starting to get more inclined after him taking all of his regular reps, plus all the 11-on-11s that they've done, because Coach said he wanted to cut out the 7-on-7s and concentrate on 11-on-11s to give Daniel a better feel for getting back in the saddle again, which, by the way, is a brilliant decision on Coach's part. But after seeing how much Daniel Jones is doing, I'm inclined to think there's a good chance he will get some preseason snaps. I'm still not sure how many, but I'm thinking now he will get some, as opposed to before when training camp was still a week or two away and I didn't think he was going to get any.
Yeah, I mean, he's taken every single rep with the first team offense through the first week of camp. So the fact that they are, again, going sort of all gas, no break with him, just throwing him right in there as if, the injury never happened. Yeah, I mean, I stand by what I thought my feelings a couple weeks ago. I don't think he's going to play a lot in the preseason. I don't think I don't even think there'll be a game where we'll see him for like a full first half, which you sometimes see with starters during the preseason. But I certainly still think that he's going to get at least a couple of drives between the 3 preseason games. I don't know which ones. I don't know if it'll be all 3, one of them, 2 of them, but I do still think we will see Daniel Jones at some point in the preseason.
Yeah, I suspect Dable will wind up telling us in our preseason production meetings when we get ready to do the games that he'll sit there and he'll say, well, Jones will get like 10 plays. And if that turns out to be a drive, well, then that's it. But if they do a 3 and out for whatever reason, I suspect he might then get a second series because I think Dable will ration out his action by number of snaps as opposed to number of drives.
Yeah, I agree with you.
201-939-4513. We'll talk about some of the stars of the first week of practice as we continue to go through this show. But for right now, we go to you, Cliff in New York. You're on line 1 on BBKL. Hello.
Hey, Paul.
Hi.
Good to be. Yeah, Matt. I don't know if you saw the show yesterday, but we were talking about Evan Neal, Paul, you and John, and I had a couple of things to add. I don't know if you need Matt to be updated first, but
well, you could just throw it out there. It's okay.
Yeah, okay. I missed this conversation yesterday.
You'll pick it up quick enough. It's okay.
Well, the main thing yesterday was, look, the guy's not on the field. Other people are being brought in. You know, it could be that if things start working out, you know, with these other guys, even if they're older and they're not the youngest players that they would ideally like to have, you know, they might not, you know, be in a hurry to switch back to seeing what Evan can do.
In short, Matt, he could be Wally pipped, like what Lou Gehrig did to Wally Pipp.
Got it.
If he sits out too long, he could lose his job, and then he may not get it back. In short.
Okay.
I'm
caught up.
Yeah, and as part of that, you know, there was a mention of, well, Evan Neal has been on the field in real games in his short career, and I think something like was the first half of the first year, and then a few more games in the second. That's what got my attention because, you know, I heard Howard emphasizing during the in-game telecasts that when Evan was playing, he was playing hurt. He was limping around. He was, in fact, a lot of the time he was playing on one leg. So it might be a little misleading to refer to his in-game experience, and that he may have actually never really shown us anything on the field as a healthy player yet. Now, obviously, if he doesn't get back on the field soon enough and is just somebody that couldn't be on the field, that's going to be tough. But if that's the way it is, that's the way it is. But when Coach Priscillo was hired, I wondered about this. I wondered if he had a way of looking at tape and can realize that he's looking at a guy who's limping around and he doesn't know much about this guy until he can see him when he's healthy. So that was the main thing I wanted to throw in there and see if it's relevant.
Well, I think that storyline has some beef. I mean, look, I asked John this the other day, and Matt, I think you're going to scratch your head and try to figure out as well. How many games do we think we've seen of Evan Neal fully healthy? More importantly, fully healthy in a row during his first 2 seasons with the Giants. And I'm not sure there's been more than a couple, if that.
I was going to say, I think you could probably count it on one hand. Like maybe just the beginning of his rookie year.
We had a hard time coming up with a number.
Yeah.
Because he's always got something wrong.
He's been dealing with something basically since the start of his rookie year, yeah.
And we all know that once the season starts and you get to the middle of the year, well, even if you play 5 or 6 games in a row, chances are you're fighting through something.
Yeah, especially as an offensive lineman.
So I don't know how many, quote, fully healthy games he's ever played, Cliff. And that was our answer. He's agreeing with us. We don't know. And so what is Carmen Priscillo supposed to do? He hasn't had a chance to work with this healthy player either. What is he going to do?
And I think that's part of the reason why the Giants seem to be, you know, taking Evan's return so cautiously.
Yeah.
They want him to get back to 100% health so everyone can finally see what he can do fully healthy. Because there's no point in bringing him back if he's 75, 80% healthy just to try to get him, you know, prepared for week 1. I think it's more important to get him fully healthy, even if that ends up meaning he has to miss a little bit of time. I think they would rather have him come back at 100% health and then get him some reps, in practice, get him kind of up to speed with, Carmen Brasillo and the rest of the guys on the offensive line. But there's no point in, trotting him out there if he's not 100% healthy.
Cliff, until we find that out, either good or bad, what he can or cannot do when he is fully healthy, how is the team truly supposed to make a decision about what to do with him?
Yeah, well, but there was a story somewhere along the line that he came back too soon from one of his injuries, and that doesn't sound like something the Giants would ever do to a player.
Well, he's basically tried to fight through every little thing that he's had, and that's part of the problem, right?
Well, they let him.
Well, because you know the way this works, right? You know the way this works. If you're hurting, that's one thing. If you're injured, that's another. When you're injured, that's when the medical people will say, wait a minute, time out, coach, he can't go. That's different. I think really what we should be saying is what differentiate the two words is that Evan Neal has played a lot when he's hurting.
Yes. That is
because he was always cleared to play. They never sent him out onto the field when the medics did not want him to play.
Yeah, and part of it is, it comes down to the player himself. Like, he's got to, if he turns around to the coaching staff, to the medical staff and says, hey, I feel okay, I'm good to go, and the medical staff, as Paul just said, aren't turning to the coaches and saying, this guy's injured, he cannot go, they're going to listen to the player and go with, his word. And I feel like Evan has really tried to tough it out at numerous times throughout his first 2 seasons. And I give props to him for trying to battle through injury, but it's led to, not the best football from him. And I think if he can get back to the field 100% healthy, it at least will give everyone the chance to evaluate him and see how he can actually play when healthy.
Cliff, final thought on this. At one point, the sand in the hourglass has to run out. You can't wait forever on this scenario. And if, and I said this yesterday, and Matt, we're going to do this here again with Matt's input, he can get Wally pipped if he's not eligible to get back out there. And Brasillo can't work with him. And they reconfigure the offensive line, and it's humming like a song. And the wheels are turning, and the Giants are playing well, and the offensive line, those starting 5, are productive. Well, in good conscience, you can't shake it up at that point. It just means there are times you can lose your job to injury. It happens.
Yeah,
let
him chime in here.
I was just going to say, we see that all the time in the NFL. A guy gets hurt, the backup comes in, plays great, and the starter never gets his job back.
Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe?
Yeah, I mean, we see it every year across the league. That's not something rare at all.
Hey, it's Rich Davis from Covino and Rich. Toyota is the best resale value brand for 2024, according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. So choose Toyota and be confident that your vehicle will hold its value year after year. And check out the legendary redesigned Land Cruiser, spacious Grand Highlander, or adventure-ready RAV4. Visit buyatoyota.com for more. Vehicles' projected resale value is specific to the 2024 model year. For more information, visit Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. Kelley Blue Book is a registered trademark of Kelley Blue Book Company, Inc. Toyota, let's go places.
All right, Cliff, one other quick point. I got other calls here.
Yeah, the other quick point is, okay, then what about the investment in the number 7 pick, another year on the contract, and he's losing all this time working in pads. Is there any chance that the need to evaluate him fits in? And I'll let you go with that.
All right, Cliff, thank you. Well, here's the bottom line. The Giants know if Evan Neal can get on the field and be the Evan Neal that they drafted, they know they're a better team for it. They know that. And that's the belief that forces them into this elongated evaluation process. Because if he was a 6th-round pick and did not put really great stuff on tape for Nick Saban at Alabama and was playing, let's say, for Yale or was an FCS school, right? And he was a 6th-round pick, they probably would not go to this extreme to try to evaluate him correctly. Fair?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. And, I've seen so many people on Twitter pretty much criticized Joe Shane for the selection of Evan Neal, saying, I can't believe he, invested the 7th overall pick on this guy 2 years ago. What was he thinking? Let's try to go back 2 years ago. That pick, Evan Neal, was praised by every analyst out there. Every single draft expert in 2022 talked about how Evan Neal was the safest and top offensive lineman in the entire draft.
Don't you think that Brian Daboll put in a call to Nick Saban to get intel?
Of course he did. I mean, just from watching Hard Knocks this year, the two first picks the Giants made were the two guys that basically Nick Saban said were the very best at their position in the entire draft, between Malik Neighbors and Tyler Newman. So he clearly leans on Nick Saban's, insight, especially when it's players that he's familiar with. But I've seen this so many times on Twitter recently, especially, since Hard Knocks started. And it's like people are trying to revise history because, yes, obviously the pick has not panned out how anyone would have hoped so far. But everyone was praising Joe Shane for the pick of Evan Neal 2 years ago. If he had not taken an offensive lineman with the 7th overall pick, everyone would have slammed him because offensive line was then and still is, or maybe not anymore, but that was the team's biggest need by far 2 years ago. Keep in mind, this was before Andrew Thomas made that big jump to the All-Pro that we've now seen the last 2 years. He wasn't All-Pro last year, but he was hurt for half the year. But I see people tweeting this, and it frustrates me so much because it's not like the other top linemen that were picked around the same time as Evan Neal. It's not like any of them have had great starts to their careers either.
Look, it was an obligatory selection. He had to make that pick.
He had to, and but it was also the right pick at the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
There's
Based
no
on
way
all that we knew, the Giants' needs, the evaluation of the player, and, by the way, his clean injury history.
Yeah. I mean, there were times in the lead up to the 2022 NFL draft where Evan Neal was projected to be the first overall pick.
There were, actually. You're right.
He was the projected top pick for quite some time in the lead up to the draft. So that has been bothering me. I've seen it a good amount the last month or so. So I just had to get that out there.
Well, I'm glad that you did. Do you feel better?
I feel a little bit better, yeah.
A little less heated now. Also with the air conditioning too. That could be part of it. 201-939-4513. Phone lines are lighting up like a Christmas tree in the middle of July. I absolutely love it. And we're going to go back to those lines right now with Marty from Manahawkin. You're next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello.
Hey, Paul. How you doing?
Hi.
Good to talk to you twice in a week.
Yeah, I saw you at the practice yesterday.
Yeah, it was good seeing you. Hey, Paul, I was wondering if you noticed that play, that timing pattern that Daniel Jones had with I think it was Ford Wheaton, where on that little comeback around the sideline, it was a nice timing play. And Ford turned around, the ball was right there, and he plucked it out of the air. And the other thing I was wondering is if you have any update on what's going on with Casey Rogers. I see him on the sideline here, but I didn't see him doing much. Is he hurt or
right.
something
I
going
have not
on?
heard of Rogers having a specific injury. Have you?
No, I mean, yesterday Coach started his press conference by describing, all the guys that are banged up. Casey Rogers was not one of them. I think he's just currently towards the very bottom of the defensive tackle depth chart. And so, the guys at the very bottom of the depth chart tend to get less reps. That's just the way it is at every
nature
position.
of the beast. Also, by the way, too, Marty, Brian Daboll was very particular about telling everybody in the media, don't read anything into it if some guy gets fewer snaps on a particular day or doesn't work, because he said every single player has a program that they're going to run through training camp as to how many snaps they get every day. So there will be occasions where a guy is on the sideline for a lot of the day or maybe doesn't work that day, and it does not necessarily have to be injury related.
Yeah, yesterday we saw Malik Neighbors did not participate, I think, in any of the team drills. He's not hurt. that was just, Coach said, it's just part of the plan from Malik Neighbors.
You know, every player has one, and they're not going to give us those individual plans.
No.
We're not going to have all 90 individual snap counts for every day. So don't panic on that. Now, if there is an injury and Coach goes over it, well, then you can keep an eye on that and hope that the guy gets back sooner rather than later, like John Michael Schmitz has a tweaked shoulder, right? Coach told us about that. But he's been in gear and on the sideline every single practice that he's missed. He's missed a couple, and he's been out there, which is always a good sign, because if something's really wrong with a player, they'll be inside working with the trainers. They're not letting the guy stand out on the sideline and watch.
For sure, yeah.
So those are things you can keep in mind. Don't get caught up by the Twitterverse, which can just, like a runaway freight train, exaggerate things because they assume stuff that's not necessarily true.
Yeah, just seeing the way Schmitz was walking around on the sideline, all in his gear and everything, I would have never even thought there was anything wrong with him.
Right. And so, you know, if you're at practice, look for something like that, because that'll give you a little bit better or more of a clue than just somebody posting something on Twitter.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Okay?
Okay, Paul. Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Come back again to practice if you get a chance. It's a lot of fun. We go to Dan in the Poconos. You're next on the program. Hello.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Hi.
Hey, Dan.
Hey. At first, I wasn't going to call. I'm just listening like I always do for the last God knows how many years. But you know, when you started getting on about in the beginning, about the players, that's just a soft spot with me because you remember how it used. I mean, I'm 60. I'm still working. I'm a house painter. I'm up on ladders in the heat, exterior painting I'm doing. And it's like, and you know what put me over the edge was when, Matt, you know, I love you, but complaining about standing there for 2 hours in the heat. Maybe we should get you like a little umbrella that you could hold. Keep you out of the sun, you know?
I do have a bucket hat. I do have a bucket hat I should probably start wearing at practice. It messes up my hair before we do the podcast, but I mean...
You know,
Dan, I will tell you, when I started doing this, when Bill Parcells was head coach, they had 3 days practices. And let me tell you, let me tell you, those were not only difficult to do, as every player will tell you who went through them, those were difficult to watch because you felt every ache and pain that those players were going through during 3 days. There was a little bit of an osmosis that we would feel their pain and their heat just because it was so dreadful to go through. So, I get it. It's a different world today. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't mean to give you too much of a hard time, but that's what I was going to bring up back in the old days, 2 days and 3 days, and now these, we don't want to overwork the poor they. So we got to take it easy on him. I'm sorry, man. I'm just so.
Hey, at least he's out there. give him credit. At least he's out there watching. Okay, now there are some folks. Right? There are some folks, especially some of these blog people, who are writing all about practice on Twitter. They're not even here.
It's true.
And it's like I'm laughing my butt off. It's like these people are reporting on practice and they're not even on the premises. Or how about some of these bloggers who, quote, report on practice from the stands underneath the canopy? They're not even real media, and they're acting as if they've, quote, covered the team for decades. I mean, are you serious? All right. I mean, you want to really get on people, those are the ones you want to get on.
I hear you. You know I love you guys. I'll let you go, man.
All right. Appreciate the call, Dan. Call again.
I thought you guys were looking out for the fans when you were talking about the weather.
Well, that too. Look, that's why we said about the watering stations, right? It's a big deal. Folks, make sure. Don't be shy. Make sure you get a good seat under the canopies on the bleachers, and make sure you're hydrated for sure. I mean, I'm not joking around. It gets pretty nasty sometimes.
Yeah, it certainly does. And Dan, don't worry, I can take a little busting, so don't worry.
He's got to deal with us as rotating hosts. I think he can deal with it. He's got some tough skin. 201-939-4513. We've got some lines open. Got to get a couple of promos out of the way, though. And remember that coming up in September, if I could only find the movement on this, there we go. I'm telling you, Pearson, we got to clean out the copy in this thing. It's just a mess. We've got the Giants Foundation hosting a 5K race and kids run presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All proceeds, or participants, I should say, will receive a commemorative T-shirt after the race. Stay for a post-race festival with appearances by Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now at giants.com/5K. Giants Huddle Podcast. You guys see it every day if you're on the website. All kinds of long-form interviews with Giants folks, NFL dignitaries, position-by-position groupings that John was able to get done sometime during the off-season. Great stuff there. Search for Giants Huddle. Subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. Go to giants.com/podcast if you like. Also, Giants season memberships for 2024. They're available. You can enjoy the Giants all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are there to learn all about them. Visit giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. Finally, you don't want to forget about Giants TV. If you haven't downloaded onto your app, and here, Fred Flintstone already has it, all right? I got it, yabba dabba doo. I got it a long time ago when it first came out. Barney, Wilma! Yeah, I got it. I don't know if they've got it. Does Dino have it, the dinosaur? I don't know if Dino has it, but I think he does, because if he loves Giants football, he's got the Giants TV app. It's free, brings you all kinds of great stuff from practice on demand. It's on Apple TV, Roku, Amazon Free TV, and the Giants mobile app. That takes care of all of our promotional announcements. And now we go back to you. 201-939-4513. Scott in New Mexico is next on the program. Hello.
Hi, guys. How you doing today?
Hi.
Hey, Scott.
I think both of you would agree that continuity with an offensive line is probably the most important portion of how a team develops.
Everybody would agree with that.
Yep.
Right. And to your point, Matt, I'm empathetic to the point that Evan Neal was the best player in college, but if he can't stay healthy, he can't stay healthy, and so he has to be replaced the way I'm looking at it. Nothing against Evan Neal, but the whole point is you need to develop the continuity before the first game of the season. I'm glad to hear that both of you think that Schmidt's injury is not serious, because obviously he's a pivotal player as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I also wanted to address something, another individual who I had a lot of respect for, John Runyon. And as Matt, you had already alluded to the fact he had a great year last year, except some of the things that I've noticed, he split snaps in the last 4 games with his backup. And in the playoff game against Dallas, he only played 30% of the snaps. He doesn't appear to be injured. So why would a guy who's that good, I mean, when I saw him with, working with Aaron Rodgers, I thought he was one of the best guards in the league. Why all of a sudden last year do you think he's, I wouldn't say in the doghouse with Green Bay, but certainly did not garnish what I thought he should have based on the credentials that he had coming in? I know he had a lot of pre-snap penalties, and which he didn't have in his career, but is there anything to be concerned with John Runyon? Because I'm looking at how do they determine who's going to play what position. Is he going to move back to the left side where he's more natural than he was at right guard? So how do you answer that question? Because, again, you had alluded to the fact that his stats were outstanding, except for what I'm now telling you, which I'm sure you're aware of. Is there a reason why John Runyon would certainly go down in the estimation of the Packers and all of a sudden not get the snaps? Is there something that?
Let me give you some injury info, Scott, and then I'll let Matt comment on what he thinks about Runyon and what he's done so far in the first week.
Okay.
Last year, first month of the season, he played through a sprained ankle. I don't know if that continued to hamper him. Later on in week 10, he was listed with a neck injury and was questionable. That flared up, and how much that impacted him down the stretch and cost him some snaps, I do not know.
Okay.
But when you see those things listed, as we've already described to you, offensive linemen in particular don't necessarily heal up during the course of the season, and I'm obviously being facetious. They play through hurts. So is it possible that those things that were listed, and we know they usually hurt more than what's listed, those impacted his total snap count? I would say absolutely possible. There's maybe something to chew on or a clue that takes care of one part of your question.
Yeah. I mean, you're right that especially the last 4 games of the regular season, Runyon split snaps with his backup.
Right.
That is 100% true. He, as Paul said, he did have some lingering injury issues that he sort of played throughout the season. It wasn't a perfectly healthy year, and you're right that he did. The one thing that he did struggle with last year were the penalties. I think he had like 6 penalties last year.
Exactly, right.
So that certainly played a part. But I will say he did play, I think, almost all the snaps against the 49ers. So clearly they did. It's not like they weren't lacking of confidence with him towards the end of the season. In those games that he did split snaps with his backup, I will say, didn't allow a single sack in any of them. In fact, he allowed 2 total pressures in those last 4 regular season games total, which is great. Giants would sign up for that in a heartbeat. In terms of the second part where you brought up, potentially switching sides, Brian Daboll was asked about that yesterday after he announced that the Giants would be signing Greg Van Roten. One of the reporters asked, well, what does that mean in terms of what side does he play on? Because obviously Van Roten, who's coming off his best year with the Raiders last year, was the right guard playing next to Jermaine Illuminor, who was the Raiders' right tackle. And the two of them collectively had both of their best seasons of their entire career playing next to each other. So Brian Daboll acknowledged that and said, look, we've got a little over a month now. This is what we're going to figure out. We're going to figure out who are the best 5 linemen that are healthy and where to slot them. So he didn't give a direct yes or no answer because, as we've come to learn with Coach Daboll, he rarely does that.
Right.
But he did acknowledge that there is a chance that Runyon could move over to the left side and Van Roten take over at right guard next to Illuminor, at least, while Evan Neal is out. All of this, with Evan Neal out, we don't really know what the situation will be necessarily when he comes back. We don't know when that will be. So for now, it sounds like Runyon will get some time potentially at both guard slots, and I wouldn't be surprised if Van Roten might get that as well, at least until they figure out which side each of them are, more comfortable and better at.
I think, as John and I said yesterday, they signed Stinney when Van Roten was still out there on the free agent market. Stinney was signed and brought in rather early compared to obviously when training camp started. So he's getting the first shot right now in the reconfigured line. If he does well, then there's really no reason for Van Roten to get a starting job because the other spots are going to be filled. So I think Van Roten was brought here as an insurance policy. I don't think he's being brought here to start. I think they want to give Stinney every chance to take that job because, after all, they signed him some time ago.
They did, but the reported numbers that are coming out for Van Roten's contract,
I saw it.
Obviously this is unofficial. We don't know this for sure, but the reported numbers, it depends. The maximum salary he can get is if he plays 50% of the snaps. Mm-hmm. So clearly that the Giants, structured this contract. I don't disagree with you in a way that he will earn that maximum amount of money if he goes out there and actually plays.
I'm sure there had to be incentive for him to come here too.
Of course,
because this is a guy who at 34 years old, I have a hunch he probably waited longer to sign, trying to miss as much of the offseason stuff as he could, as a lot of veterans do. That's not a knock on him. Many veterans will sign later rather than earlier because they like to do stuff on their own and they don't want to be subjected to a lot of the team drills and the team off-season programs. So that could be part of that too.
But at the same time, if that was the case, then I don't think it's fair to assume that Stinney will get the first chance to start just because he signed earlier.
No. Here's what I will say about that. I don't play that off of Stinney's situation. I play that off of why Van Roten would come here as opposed to some other team. Because I'm sure there are other teams around the league who could use another steady interior offensive lineman who's got some good experience.
For sure.
I'm sure. So I'm going to say that that the timing of Stinney's signing was because they hopped on him first because I think they wanted to bring him in and they saw what he did in Tampa. He has playoff experience, and I think he's got the leg up on winning the starting job. But I will say, if you're Van Roten and now you've decided that my clock says it's time to go in, well, where's he going to go? And I think there are two reasons he comes here. He comes here because of Brasillo, and he comes here because he believes probably that with the Giants' offensive line history and their injury history, there's a chance he's going to get to earn those incentives.
Hi, this is Shirley Strawberry from the Steve Harvey Morning Show. Toyota is the best resale value brand for 2024, according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. So choose Toyota and enjoy the confidence that your vehicle will retain its value. And check out the legendary redesigned Land Cruiser, spacious Grand Highlander, and RAV4, available in gas, hybrid, and plug-in hybrid models. Find out more at buyatoyota.com. Vehicles' projected resale value is specific to the 2024 model year. For more information, visit Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com. Kelley Blue Book is a registered trademark of Kelley Blue Book Company, Inc. Toyota, let's go places.
Yeah, but I have to think that I disagree with you on one thing. I think that Van Roten probably has the inside track to starting.
You think so?
I think. All right. I think the fact that he decided to sign here, albeit a week into training camp, I don't think he does that unless he is given a wink sort of nod from the coaching staff that he has a good chance at starting.
I think and he should believe that, because if he's going to compete, and I think he's going to compete with Stinney, I really do. I think they're going to fight it out.
Well, one last question.
He should believe in himself. He should.
He should.
Why shouldn't
his track? He just has. So last year was the first time Greg Van Roten started every game in a season, I believe. Yeah. He started all 17 games. Last year was also the first time Aaron Stinney got significant playing time.
Yep.
He started, I want to say, 11 games.
I think so.
So Van Roten has more experience than Stinney.
Yeah. Go ahead, Scott.
One last question, and it's in regards to your points that you're making now. And I'll take it off the air. How much can you glean from the practices that you have remaining and the preseason games? Where will they make the determination, or can you make a justification that they'll actually make the determinations in the preseason?
You have to make the preseason. You have to make the decision, Scott. They play the Minnesota Vikings, week 1. They've got to know. They've got to know by then what they're going to do.
Away. So the point is, whether Van Roten starts or someone else, with the offensive line, as I started my conversation, it's all about making sure that you have the 5 best players. So will the determination be made in the remaining of the practices before the Detroit game, or will they actually see what happens in the Detroit game? And I'll take your answers off the air, guys.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Scott.
You remember when Brasillo talked to us out on the patio when the positional coaches had their media avails? I believe Brasillo said that by the late end of the training camp, preseason training camp all melts into one here. You don't pick a particular day. But he wanted his starting 5 in place before opening day. He made that clear. He wanted the starting 5 in place.
Yeah, before week 1.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. He didn't give a date, though. I don't remember a date.
No, and look, in an ideal world, would you love to have your starting 5 offensive line established before the first preseason game? Sure. In an ideal world, yes.
They don't have that luxury,
That
though.
would be great. But it's given the circumstances surrounding the Giants' offensive line currently, I don't think that's realistic. Van Roten, tomorrow will be his first actual practice on the field. He was here yesterday, but just observing practice. So tomorrow will be the first time he actually puts on pads and steps out on the field with his new teammates. I don't think, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I don't think that's enough for them to decide this guy is our starter or Stinney is our starter. I think they will both get plenty of reps during practice. Again, the joint practices will be key. Seeing these guys go up against some of Detroit's defensive linemen, Aleem McNeil, right? The defensive interior guy. That'll be great competition for both Stinney and Van Roten. And they should both get some playing time.
Knock on wood. Van Roten is 34 years old.
Yeah.
Let's just hope he's healthy enough to compete for the job.
For sure.
He's coming in at 34. We don't know exactly what he's done during the offseason, and now he's got to go out there and practice. Let's just hope that nothing happens to him so that he's able to compete.
Of course.
At 34 years old, that's a little bit long in the tooth in this game.
Of course.
Let's just hope he's okay.
But, I would have to think that the Giants wouldn't give him the contract they did if he wasn't,
I'm
fully
sure he's
ready
healthy
to go.
today. How's he going to be after his first practice?
I hear you, but he did play all 17 games last year as a 33-year-old.
Do you know the history of Giants offensive linemen?
Yes, I do. And I do know
There's
overall,
this nasty Meadowlands injury bug that flies around here. It kind of hides in the swamp in the evening. Then it comes out again first thing before breakfast and just starts biting Giants players.
I hear you.
I
hear you. That's the thing that scares me the most every training camp. Anytime I see any player fall to the ground, I hold my breath and wait until he gets up.
Let's just say I hope he has every chance to compete for a job and push whoever they want to put him up against so that the best man wins.
Of course. If Stinney ends up performing better than Van Roden, he should 100% get the starting job over him. I'm not arguing against that. But all I do want to say is that, especially in today's day and age, we see older offensive linemen still dominating in the NFL. Tyrone Smith, 34 years old. One of the
guy was a multiple All-Pro, though.
I know. Different. All I was bringing up is the age aspect of it.
Guys can play until their late 30s,
we do see guys still playing at a very high level along the offensive line late into their 30s.
They can.
It's not. I don't think it's that rare anymore.
I'm not dismissing Van Roten at all. Please don't take it that way. I'm simply saying he's competition.
Yeah.
And anytime you bring in competition, either that guy wins a job or pushes the other guys to get better. One way or the other, it's supposed to be a positive.
It's definitely a positive.
So let's see.
Just at the very least, it's another veteran guy with experience to add to the mix.
Who Brasillo has already coached and likes a lot.
Who Brasillo has also gotten the best play out of this guy in his career last year.
Which, if that's the magical elixir for this line, because maybe Brasillo and Van Roten somehow have found a great way to make everything wonderful, well, then maybe that's the edge that he needs to beat Stinney out. It could be too.
Yeah, I look back at the Las Vegas Raiders last year. They were did not have the most talented roster in the league by any means. The pedigree of the guys that they brought to start on the offensive line at the start of the season, other than I believe Colton Miller, none of the other guys really had a high pedigree in terms of where they were drafted or how much they signed for. And yet the Raiders had I think a top 10 offensive line last year. And it was Brasillo, and we've, you and I, John and I, all of us, we've spoken about the magic that Carmen Brasillo was able to work last year with the players that the Raiders had.
Yeah.
The right side of that line for the Raiders was Van Roten at right guard and Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle.
Yep.
And both of those guys have been around the league for quite a long time prior to last year, and both of them had their best seasons of their careers under Brasillo.
Yes.
And on a Vegas Raiders team that did not have a ton of talent around them.
Mm-hmm.
So I am confident that Carmen Brasillo, again, whatever mix of five guys end up being the starters out there, I just have so much confidence in Brasillo that he will be able to get the very best out of those guys.
I think he was the most important acquisition of the offensive lineman. Carmen Brasillo, the offensive line coach.
I think an argument could be made that signing him could end up being just as important as trading for Brian Burns. Honestly, because as we've seen,
it may turn out that way.
As we've seen we've been talking for the last decade about the struggles along the offensive line.
Mm-hmm.
If we could bring an offensive line coach in that finally turns, the unit around, and it's not just Brasillo. Obviously, the players that were brought in also play a very large part in it. Having a healthy Andrew Thomas at left tackle will certainly help boost the offensive line from what it was last year. But Brasillo, we've spoken about this. He could end up being the most significant addition the Giants made this entire offseason. Period.
Although it's gonna be tough to be more important than Malik Neighbors
and Brian Burns. I get that.
But you know what?
If he can turn the offensive line around,
he could rival them in terms of importance.
If he can turn the offensive line around, and again,
that's a nice bold prediction. I like that. Put that down, Pearson. That's
I'm not saying
prediction.
it's a bold prediction. I would not be surprised if the offensive line has a very good season, and by very good season, I would take just a middle of the pack offensive line, honestly. Compared to what we've seen in the last
Go back to my key
decade.
word. Functional.
Yes.
That's it.
Functional. Again.
Get me a functional offensive line, and I could deal with that as a coach any day of the week.
The line in 2022
was functional.
Barely, though, but it was functional.
It was functional.
But barely, and that was the best season we've seen from Daniel Jones. Saquon Barkley had a great year, and that was with a lack of offensive playmakers on the roster. As we've spoken about, there was no Wan'Dale Robinson in 2022, or he tore his ACL 6-7 games in. There was no Jalen Hyatt. There's no Malik Neighbors. Those three guys are now here. They're all healthy, plus Darius Slayton. If just some adequate offensive line play will help elevate this entire offense, and I think we'll see an offense that looked more like it did in 2022, and even better than it did in 2022.
Do I even need to remind people that the 2016 team that went to the playoffs, of course, lost in Lambeau to Green Bay, and it was Eli Manning here, don't get me wrong, but that line, it was a functional line. Flowers, Pugh, Richburg, John Jerry, and Bobby Hart. Think about that starting 5 offensive line that went to the playoffs. That was a functional line, and that might have been about the best that line could ever play together, because those 5 guys together, actually did okay that season. But other than that, their individual resumes, they were not part of great offensive line success stories.
I was going to say, some of those names you just mentioned. Oh boy.
Okay, but that was a functional line that year.
You're right.
What a coincidence. The line's functional. The team makes the playoffs. Gee, it's a miracle. We invented something brand new. Functional offensive lines get you into the playoffs. Wow, that's amazing. All right, folks, 201-939-4513 is the phone number. If you'd like to get in, our lines are open right now. We would absolutely love to talk to you. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot. After 1 week of practices at training camp.
Yep.
Star of training camp so far is X.
I just pick one player?
Give me one guy who should, at the moment, first week, gets the, if you're the New York Rangers, you get the cap, right? You get the hat.
Can I give one on offense and one on defense?
I'll let you cheat. Go ahead.
Okay. On offense, it would be hard to say anyone other than Malik Neighbors. And it hasn't been a perfect week for him.
No, he's had a few that he wishes he held on to.
100%, but he's, as we all know, he's a rookie. This is his very first training camp. He just got into the building, 3 months ago? 2 months ago? 3 months ago, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to go through some growing pains as a rookie, but the flashes that he has shown and some of the catches that he has made, and this is even going back to the spring, but even just thinking about this past week of practices, he has made some plays where you kind of stop and you're like, holy cow, did he just do that?
Mm-hmm.
The Giants drafted him to be a game changer. There's no doubt about it. And within the first week of practices, he has shown that he has the ability to be that playmaker that they selected him to be.
His toolbox is full.
Oh, yeah. So that is my easy pick for offense.
I'll give you an offensive one, and
I
won't copy or steal your guy.
I took the easy one.
Let's disqualify him.
Okay.
All right. Tyrone Tracy.
Tyrone Tracy's looked good.
This guy has some really good quicks. Not just speed, but quicks. Really good jukes. Catches the ball very well. Obviously converted wide receiver at Purdue. Has done a really good job of showing outside moves to get into the open field. Has caught some long passes downfield in the one-on-one drills. We've seen that. And he explodes through the line on running plays and shows just a lot of quickness at the second level. They've given him a lot more reps than I thought I would see, to be honest with you. I would go there, again, disqualifying the guy you picked already. I go Tracy.
Tracy's looked impressive. I think the running back group as a unit has surprised some people in a positive way. I mean, Dante Turbo Miller has made a couple of eye-opening plays.
John and I talked yesterday that we think from our vantage point, just from an eyewitness account of plays, he's looked better than even Eric Gray, who has come back for a second season. We think that Miller has done more things on the field than Gray has this month.
Oh, I agree completely. I mean, I understand now after seeing him in person why he has the nickname Turbo, because when he hits the edge, holy cow, it feels like someone, like you're playing Madden and someone held down the turbo button and he just hit another speed.
Yeah.
Like it makes perfect sense. He's made some catches, some runs that I'm like, how the heck did he do that?
I don't want to compare the player, but he does give you that sense of David Meggett when David Meggett was here for the Giants some years ago. They're not the same player. Please don't misinterpret. But the fact that he's so diminutive, so small, so compact, and yet so incredibly quick, and he makes you do a double take, and you make sure, wow, yeah, and he draws your attention when he's got the ball with some really good speed. Heck, he ran a 4.28 supposedly in his pro day. So, I'm not saying he's David Meggett, but there is some thoughts that make you flash back to Meggett when you see him. So I'm really intrigued by this guy.
Yeah. He still obviously has got a battle to make the team. He's, there's a group of running backs that are competing for a few spots, and Devin Singletary is obviously making the team.
Yeah.
Tyrone Tracy is going to make the team.
Yeah.
Beyond that, we'll see, I believe.
Okay.
There's an interesting group of guys. I will say, though, between Tracy and Turbo, I really hope at least one of them ends up being the kick returner, because I think both of them could fill that role perfectly and just be so explosive in the return game.
We've got a couple of minutes left. Give me a defensive guy.
All right. I've got a few, but I'll just start with one.
Yeah, you go.
I know, but there've been a few guys that have looked
after
impressive.
I disqualify your guy, maybe I'll pick one of your other guys.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the secondary, where I have two guys, but I'll talk about one.
Okay.
Drew Phillips has impressed me, and especially the last couple of days. He's looked very impressive. He has had very good coverage when he's been, manning the slot, no matter who he's been going up against. He's had time with both the ones and the twos. It doesn't really matter who he's been across. He's had great coverage. I'm not going to say every play, but a lot of the time. And I believe it was yesterday during one-on-one drills, he just made a great jump on a route and intercepted a pass, which you don't see too often in these one-on-one drills. Most of the time, the receiver wins those matchups. And in addition to his great coverage, he's made some really strong plays in the run game. I mean, as we saw in the Hard Knocks episode last night, the coaching staff was very high on him. The front office was very high on Drew Phillips coming out of college. And part of it was his toughness, especially in the run game. And through the first few practices, all of that's been on full display.
Totally agree with you. I would have picked him had you not done it. So, but since I'm going to disqualify his selection, the other guy who is constantly playing downhill and is always right there, and no surprise, it's Bobby Okereke. He is always in the right spot. He's always filling the hole. He is always in the mix wherever the ball is. That should not surprise anybody, though, because I thought he had a Pro Bowl caliber season last year, and it would not surprise me now that the Giants have bookended Thibodeau and Burns, and they got Dexter Lawrence in the front as they did last year too, that Okereke really does wind up making the Pro Bowl this year.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be even better.
I agree with you. He's looked great. He looked like he did last year, and a guy that has surprised me a little bit just because you brought up Bobby. This isn't even the other guy I wanted to talk about, but just real quick, Deontay Johnson. who's gotten some
He's done very well for himself.
He's gotten
hasn't
some
he?
snaps playing alongside Bobby with the ones, and he's looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, he obviously is an undrafted rookie from last year, I believe, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. He's got a bit
Toledo.
he's got a bit of an uphill battle to make the roster, but so far so good with that.
He's starting to inch forward.
He is.
Darian
And
Beavers, by the way, also looks pretty darn good coming back.
Darian Beavers has made some plays as well, but real quick, the other guy I just want to talk about, very strong start to the summer, Dean Belton.
Yes.
He's gotten more of a chance with Tyler Newman missing the first week of practices. Belton has gotten one interception on the goal line. He's gotten his hands on the ball a lot of times. Has had great coverage. Very good start to camp for Dane Belton.
We're having fun, folks. Come on out. If you got your free tickets for Giants training camp, do participate. Get out here, get a watch for yourself, and enjoy what's going on here at Giants practice. That'll do it for today's episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live. It is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants, and it's part of your Giants podcast platforms everywhere and at giants.com/podcasts. For Matt Citak, I'm Paul Dottino. We'll see you next time.
Odoo is business management made so simple, a kid could explain it.
Sometimes business software can't talk to other programs. But Odoo, funny word, has every program from CRM to HR to accounting in one platform. It should cost a lot, but it doesn't. So you should use Odoo because they save you money.
Odoo makes a lot of sense, but doesn't cost a lot of sense. Sign up now at odoo.com.
That's ODOO.com.
Good job.
Thanks.
Zero Foxtrot isn't just a brand. It's a way of life. Founded and operated by veterans, Zero Foxtrot's unique apparel and gear echoes the grit of the warrior culture. Zero Foxtrot dedicates itself to producing content, honoring the sacrifices of forgotten heroes of the past, and connecting history to the present. Embark on a journey with Zero Foxtrot today at zerofoxtrot.com. It's not merely our products. It's about the ethos that we embody. Rugged, resilient, and timeless.